We are here speaking with Jagdeep Chhokar. He is one of the founders of the Association for Democratic Reforms, which is a non-government organization which scrutinizes closely political funding in India. Mr. Chhokar, can you tell us what has changed in the last 6 years and a bit longer that the Bharatiya Janata Party government has been in power as far as political funding or the funding of political parties, candidates standing for elections and election campaigns over the last 6 years?
Well, there is a very significant change which is quite clearly visible. Earlier, funding used to be raised from a variety of sources. Political parties and candidates would raise money from different people, different corporates. But in the last few years, it has become concentrated fundraising. If I may say, earlier it was retail fundraising, now it is wholesale fundraising. So if you raise, say, X amount of money from 200 people, your transaction costs are very high. But if you raise the same amount of money from 3 people, your transaction costs are very low. So it's a more efficient way of collecting money, which leads on to that these wholesale contributors to political parties obviously then demand their pound of flesh. They want a kind of a quid pro quo. I have given you so much money, then you have to do something for me. Whereas people earlier, when they gave small amounts of money, they didn't have much leverage on the party. But these people who give sizable chunks, let us say 30% or 40% of the political party's annual income, they obviously then influence the political party. And if the party happens to be in the government, they influence the government.
Would I be correct in presuming that the research that has been done by the Association for Democratic Reforms indicates that the ruling party, the Bharatiya Janata Party, has been the biggest beneficiary in the recent past? And is this what your research is showing?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, let us take a concrete example. The government introduced something called electoral bonds, which, without going into details, are a very, very retrograde step. It makes political funding completely beyond anybody's knowledge. And in the first round of the electoral bonds, 95% of the money raised through electoral bonds went to the ruling party. 95%. So ruling party, even traditionally ruling parties have had an edge over the opposition for obvious reasons. But in the last few years, it has become absolutely clear or absolutely blended, as you may like to call it.
Mr. Chhokar, would you like to tell us a little bit about the funding of politics, political parties, election campaigns, candidates standing for elections by corporates and large corporates? What has been the role that has been played by Indian corporate bodies and foreign corporate bodies?
You see, if you go back historically, even in the pre-independence era, the independence movement, which was spearheaded by several political groupings, was funded by several corporates, Indian corporates. For example, Mahatma Gandhi used to go and stay in the Birla's house. And it is no secret that the Birlas and Tatas, etc., funded the independence campaign. So that soon after independence, it kind of went down. Then it started rising up again and came to a point that at one point the corporate donations to political parties were forbidden by law. That gave rise to the phenomenon called black money, that political parties gave money to political parties, corporates gave money to political parties, but they did not say so. And that was the beginning of the crony capitalism era. And now we have come to, as I said, we have come to wholesale fundraising. where there's a very, very close nexus between political parties, particularly political parties in power, and large corporates. As a matter of fact, there are obviously unconfirmed information going around that 3 or 4 large corporates control the government completely. So crony capitalism, domestic crony capitalism is very much in force. So far as the foreign funding is concerned, foreign funding by law is not allowed for political parties. But there are always instances where political parties tries to circumvent that law and get foreign money through a variety of means. And there's a very interesting situation where the organization I work with, Association for Democratic Reforms, we found that both major political parties, the BJP and the Congress, had accepted money from a so-called electoral trust, which had been set up by 3 companies which are based in India, but are 100% fully owned subsidiaries of a company based abroad. So we filed a suit in the High Court, and the High Court said in a judgment that these 2 political parties are guilty of violating the concerned law, and action should be taken against them within 6 months. But lo and behold, no action has been taken. We have been going to the courts again and again, but haven't achieved much. But that is a recorded case that political parties have accepted foreign money in violation of the law. Of course, some very bizarre things have happened after that. The government tried to amend the law retrospectively. Then it tried to amend the law retrospectively, which was not in force for 10 years. So it was like amending, or it was like doing something to a person who died 10 years ago, and you say, let us replace his knee. So some bizarre things have also happened, but foreign money, there is not enough information on foreign money coming into the political process, but there are enough circumstantial incidents and information to show that there is an excess.
The reports that have been produced by the Association for Democratic Reforms, could you briefly summarize and tell those who are viewing you and listening to you, what are some of the highlights that the recent research reports produced by the ADR have revealed about the character and the complexion and the nature of political funding?
You see, political funding is very, very intricately intermingled with criminalization of politics. The reports that we produce, for example, this is a report for the 2014 parliamentary election, and you can see how thick it is. We started this initiative way back in 1999, where we said that people with criminal cases pending against them, currently going on, are contesting elections, and preferably they should not be allowed to contest elections. But at the very least, the voters must know which candidate has how many cases and of what kind. So these reports actually are based on that information, and the importance of these reports is that the candidate declares in a sworn affidavit on oath that I have XYZ criminal cases pending against me. So since the candidate himself or herself declares it, the question of this information being wrong does not arise. So this is absolutely authentic information about the criminal, financial and educational antecedents of candidates, and the revelations that have come out are actually mind-boggling and in a way sad and tragic. Because in 2004, when we did this the first time, about 25% of the members of the lower house of parliament had criminal cases pending against them. When we came to the next general election in 2009, This figure has gone up to about 30%, which was a big shock because we thought it might go down or it should go down. Well, lo and behold, come to 2014, it had gone up to 35%. And despite reports of this size being available, it has had no impact on political parties. They continue to nominate people with serious criminal cases, with heinous offences against them. And I hate to say this, but in the 2019 election, the number of members of the lower house of parliament who have criminal cases against them is 43%. This is a very tragic and a very dismal picture. There are multiple reasons. Political parties say people should not vote for such people. On the other hand, some people like us say that unless you nominate them, people cannot vote. So why do you nominate them? And this brings me to the criminal and finance nexus. A lot of activities happened during the election campaigns which are not legally permitted. But given the size of the country, complexity of the country, and the expanse, it is impossible for anyone to monitor everything that happens. And several of these, I would actually call them illegal activities, are funded by money which is not earned through legitimate sources. So this kind of money is more often than not found with people who have a criminal bent of mind or who engage in illegal activities. So the nexus between criminality and political funding is very strong and very deep.
My last question to you, and I'm in a sense returning to the question I had asked earlier. In certain other parts of the world, we see foreign companies, foreign organization overtly, covertly using the media, using the online, using the internet, have sought to influence political behavior in countries other than theirs through money and through other means. Where would you place India in a global context?
This is a very difficult question to answer, but all I can say is that India is not free of foreign global influences in its political activity. Some of them happen through a variety of ways which are below the radar, but the fact that a scheme like the electoral bond scheme has been introduced and which is running despite the Supreme Court having said that this raises very serious issues, but except for saying that it raises serious issues, it is very sad that the Supreme Court has not had time to look at those serious issues. So the electoral bond scheme has actually opened a floodgate for foreign money to come into India, because now any foreign company can set up a fictitious company in India, and this fictitious company can donate any amount of money it likes to any political party. Before this came in, there were two requirements which had a check. One was that a company giving money to political parties had to declare which political party have they given money to, declare their name and the amount. So it was in public domain. The second requirement was that a profit-making company over the last 3 years can donate only up to 7.5% of its profits to a political party. This limit of 7.5% has been completely removed. That is why I say the floodgates are now open. You can set up a company which does not do anything, but it exists in name, and this has been set up by a foreign entity. The foreign entity sends money to its subsidiary, and the subsidiary gives all the money to a political party. So the nexus is going to be very bad for Indian politics. Now coming to where does it stand vis-a-vis the world, I don't think we are as bad as some countries in the world are, where the entire economy is completely controlled by multinationals. And you also know such cases where companies have taken over countries by, upsetting their rulers or their presidents and so on, or people have been killed. And now one hears that there are influences coming around to the US presidential election from another so-called world power. So things are getting very difficult, and as a matter of fact, I may sound like a techno skeptic, but I think the social media, the technical developments which have made movement of everything completely seamless and uncontrollable and undetectable, that has created a very serious situation for the world, and it has to be seen how it plays out.
Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Mr. Jagdeep Chhokar, for giving us your time.
Thank you.